For some engineers, the lure of a life spent tinkering with engines in pursuit of power, efficiency and reliability means they are destined for a career in motorsport. But despite his enviable track record at the Le Mans 24 Hours, a 100% podium record between 1999 and 2016, claiming 13 wins with Audi and 1 with Bentley in '03, that wasn't the case for Audi Sport's longtime head of engine development Ulrich Boretzky. Based at Audi Sport's Neckarsulm site in Baden-Württemberg, 120 miles northwest of the Ingolstadt HQ where the Team Joest run R8, R10, R15 and R18 juggernauts originated, Boretzky is an engineer whose contribution to Audi's successes in touring cars, prototype racing and GT3 cannot be gauged in sheer numbers alone. The 64-year-old developed the 3.6-liter V8 turbo for the original R8R prototype that became Audi's first purpose-designed race engine since the auto union days of the 1930s. He then added direct injection in 2001 that improved power, drivability and fuel economy, then pushed for the introduction of full power. That proved an instant hit in '06, winning on its debut in the Sebring 12 Hours and finishing on the podium at Le Mans every year until Audi's swan song 10 years later. Yet that was never part of Boretzky's plan. "I never wanted to become an engineer. Seriously, I wanted to be an architect," he says. "Everything was planned to study it, and then I don't know how, I found out that being an architect, I would be forced to build houses I wouldn't like. I was never enthusiastic about racing as such. I enjoyed it, but I can live without it. It was only after completing a mechanical engineering course at the University of Munich, okay, I wasn't going to be an architect, but I wanted to design something, that Boretzky, whose father owned a body workshop, stumbled onto the path his life would take. I never wanted to become an engineer. Seriously, I wanted to be an architect." Ulrich Boretzky invited to an interview at BMW Motorsport in 1982. He presented plans for an engine he had designed while at university and was hired on the spot by legendary engineer Paul Rosche. After 9 months spent working on high-performance engines for BMW's road division, Boretzky was moved across to BMW's Motorsport Arm 483 to assist development of the M12 turbo in the back of Gordon Murray's Brabham BT52, which, in the hands of Nelson Piquet, became the first turbocharged Formula One car to win the title. "I was responsible for the exhaust, turbocharger, wastegate and all kinds of stuff like that," he says. "There was one designer and I was the number two. You cannot imagine this today in Formula One. It was crazy. You had to make the design, no CAD, all the drawing, calculations, even organize the purchasing of the parts, so you are working day and night. We became world champions and I got a bit of a taste for motorsport." Boretzky was appointed project leader for 1984, but frequently butted heads with Rosche and departed for Audi as head of race engine design 2 years later. "We were a bit too similar on one hand, so we always argued with each other and I was always the loser because he was the big boss," reflects Boretzky of his relationship with Rosche. Having won the world championship, he was a hero of course. "I was just a young engineer. Compared to him, I was nothing." Having scaled back on its motorsport involvement after the collapse of Group B, things started slowly at Audi, but Boretzky found success in the U.S. with the Bob Tullius Group 44 Run Trans Am project in 1988 and an IMSA a year later. Attentions then turned to the DTM in developing a production-based V8, the first normally aspirated engine he had ever worked on. "We had exactly 6 months until the first race, April 1, 1990. I will never forget that," he says. "We started in November '89. It was a nightmare, driving the big V8 Quattro. Hans Stuck won the championship at the first time of asking after the guesting Mercedes of Michael Schumacher tangled with BMW's championship leader Johnny Cecotto at the first corner of the Hockenheim season finale. It gave Boretzky the satisfaction of beating his old employer on its home turf. But this was only the start of Audi's success in touring cars. After Frank Bielo made it back-to-back titles in 1991, Audi departed the DTM amid protests over the legality of its new crankshaft, but made an instant impression in the 2-liter Super Touring category and won in French Super Tourisme with Biela in '93. By '96, Audi had swept all 7 series it entered, including the British Championship, despite having to carry draconian weight penalties for much of the year. By 1996, Audi had swept all 7 touring car series it entered using Boretsky's engines, including the BTCC. I stopped designing because I was engaged in organization and management, how to produce 300 engines in a year and to make sure there is an engine on every weekend wherever it is needed, says Boretsky, who was appointed to his current role in '93. This super touring was a very good apprenticeship of organizational things, how to structure the department, the purchasing and all of this stuff. This we did until '97. Audi's next project was the big one. Boretsky and head of motorsport Wolfgang Ullrich were summoned by Group CEO Franz Joseph Päffgen to the newly acquired X-Toms base in Norfolk, where they were told that Audi was going endurance racing. He said, "I have a dream," recalls Boretsky. "I want to win Le Mans and you tell me what you need to win." I was shocked, to be honest. Päffgen was initially opposed to Boretsky's proposal for a 3.6-liter V8, but despite concern over rising water pressure, the lead R8R finished third on its debut at Le Mans. The second car was 14 laps behind and fourth. Both cars had also made the finish on the R8R's competition debut at Sebring, the lead car again finishing third, albeit 3 laps behind the winning BMW, a fact that greatly pleased the engine man. "I was extremely proud of that," he says. Before that, all race engines Audi had done were based on production engines, and it was a turbocharged one of course. Päffgen said, "I apologize for having pushed you for the normally aspirated engine. You were absolutely right. From this moment on, I had the full support in any direction I wanted, and I needed it again when I went to the direct injection. I didn't know how to do it, but I just said, we have to do it, and we somehow made it work." By this time, Boretsky was managing an engine department of almost 40 people, up from 14 in 1993, and had contributed to World Rally Championship programs for Veg brands Seat and Škoda, gradually building up his department to be ready for Audi's greatest challenge yet. "I managed it a little bit like my own business, selling engines, trying to help here and there," he says. "I was always trying to get capacity to do more and more. It was the preparation maybe for TESL, TDI, turbocharged direct injection. Technology had been used in Audi road cars since 1989, but never adopted for use in motorsport until Boretsky insisted, against the wishes of many on the board, that the greater fuel economy and massive torque produced by ASL engine posed the best route for endurance racing. If I have a plan and I am convinced about it, I fight for it, no matter what it takes," he says. "This is something maybe which made my career such as it is, not being afraid of a challenge. We already had at that time half a dozen victories, but to win with ASL would be something really special. If I have a plan and I am convinced about it, I fight for it, no matter what it takes." Boretsky project started in strictest secrecy in 2003, although Boretsky didn't get the official green light to race ASL at Le Mans until the following year, when the first SL-powered entry for over 50 years, a Tourist Sports Lola using the production V10 turbo from a VW Touareg prepared by Caterpillar, underlined the challenge he would face by lasting only 35 laps before the overstressed transmission gave up. But there was a problem. Nobody in the Audi Sport competition department had any experience off-cell engines. "I went to my colleagues in production and I said, you are wrestle guys, explain to me what are the most important things I have to look after." Boretsky recalls, "They said, simple, air, the more the better. I said, okay, this doesn't really help me, but the other one is capacity. That's another story. Permitted to use up to 12 cylinders and 5.5 liters of displacement." Boretsky did just that and set about testing with a production-based V8 using a crankshaft that had a similar bore and stroke to the later V12 to better understand the cooling, forced induction and injection requirements for his bespoke aluminum design. The production-based engine could achieve close to 650 bhp and around 660 pounds-feet of torque on the dyno, but there was never any question of Boretsky dropping his pet project. "I had never made a 12-cylinder. I wanted to make a 12-cylinder, so I made it," he says. "It was curiosity and passion. It felt like somebody who has discovered a new island." The first rollout of the new R10, the replacement for the R8 that had won Le Mans every year from 2000 to 2005. Except '03, when the Bentley Speed 8 LMGTP powered by a Beretsky-developed 4-liter V8 turbo finished first and second, was completed by November '05, with its whispering V12 packing 650 bhp and 750 pounds-feet. It won on its debut at Sebring the following March, despite dropping 3 cylinders by the finish, while its Le Mans bout brought further difficulties, as the injectors on the lead. But the second R10 driven by Bila, Emanuele Pirro and Marco Werner ran unaffected and, using the same engine in the race as it had for practice and qualifying, swept to victory, the first of 3 in a row against ever stronger opposition, which include Peugeot from 2007, after missing out in 2009 to the French Marks 908 with the new R15, powered by a lighter 5.5-liter V10. Audi's updated R15 more than compensated for the reduction in boost pressure and air restrictor limitations placed on diesels by the AC0410 and smashed the 39-year-old distance record on its way to victory, managing a still unbeaten 5,410.7 kilometers, 397 laps, but it's the 2011 iteration of the 24 hours, only the second competitive outing for Beretsky's 3.7-liter V6 after delays had caused the new R18 coupe to miss Sebring, that he highlights as the most emotional of his career. Infographic provided by Motorsport Stats. The last remaining Audi held off a bevy of Peugeots to win by just 13 seconds. It was also the last non-hybrid win for the foreseeable future. Audi's electric-aided R18 e-tron Quattro, beating Toyota in 12, 13 and 14, against ever tighter restrictions on fuel usage. Beretsky was still finding gains until Audi's withdrawal from the World Endurance Championship in 2016, and regrets that the latest iteration of the 4-liter V6L, with consumption figures he brands a huge achievement, was never raced. If someone said, "You're a legend," I said, "No, forget it. Legends are, I'm still alive." Beretsky. 20 years on from the debut of the prototype program that rewrote the history books, Beretsky remains modest about his contribution. "I never wanted to become a star. I still don't want to be," he says. "If someone said, 'You're a legend,' I would say, 'No, forget it. Legends are, I'm still alive and I want to be for a longer time.' It's not down to me personally. It was my department that made it work, that made the design accurate. It's always a group that is making that." Asked for his keys to success, Beretsky highlights being humble and modest, not being afraid of big names, and making decisions based on reason and not deviating. The third part of his answer is illuminating. Had he followed it to the letter, he wouldn't have had a career in motorsport. Audi, not to mention sports car racing, would have been much the poorer for it. Longtime Joest technical director Ralph Juttner on Beretsky: "He's a pure racing engine guy, no question. He works in a methodical way and organizes his whole department the same, so we never had to wait for engines. No matter how late everything was, when the latest R18 or R15 was about to be finished, the engine was always ready." He was very talented in convincing the board members, who have to give the money, that he needed so much time and so many engines, so we could make sure that once his engines were put into the race cars they were already running properly.